Welcome back to Bardic Sleep Stories. As the world outside grows quiet and the shadows lengthen, we return once more to the sanctuary of the past. Take a deep, slow breath, feeling the air fill your lungs before releasing it fully. Let your shoulders drop, allow the muscles in your face to soften, and feel the weight of your body sink into the comfort of your bed. You are safe, you are still, and you are ready to travel through time. The stories we tell here are long, steady, and detailed. They are designed to occupy the wandering mind with the gentle rhythm of history, providing a path that leads away from the worries of today and toward a deep, restorative sleep. There is no pressure to follow every word or reach the end of the chronicle. Whether you drift away in 5 minutes or 50, the story will remain here, a constant and calming presence in the dark. Tonight, we immerse ourselves in a grand and sprawling narrative. We shall set aside the haste of the modern age to observe the slow turning of the wheel of power, focusing on the textures of life, the echoes of ancient stone, and the quiet legacy of those who came before us. Our journey this evening leads us into the heart of a vast and storied heritage. We begin our exhaustive exploration of the apothecary's winter. The year is 1542, and a profound silence has descended upon the world. A heavy blanket of snow, thick and pristine, covers the cobblestones of a small, isolated village. The roofs of the timber-framed houses are laden with white drifts, bowing gently under the weight of the season. The air is sharp and biting, smelling of wood smoke and ice, but inside the shop on the corner, the atmosphere is entirely different. This is the domain of the village apothecary, a man who stands as the barrier between his neighbors and the harshness of the winter chill. His shop is a sanctuary of warmth and aromatic complexity, a wooden vessel filled with the preserved essence of the summer sun, waiting to be decanted into the dark days of January. Stepping through the heavy oak door, which swings shut with a solid thud against the draught, we enter the main chamber of the apothecary shop. The room is dimly lit, illuminated only by the orange glow of a large stone hearth where a fire of seasoned apple wood burns steadily. The light flickers across the walls, revealing a space that is a masterpiece of organization and clutter. Every available surface is occupied. The walls are lined from floor to ceiling with shelves made of dark, polished walnut. Upon these shelves sit hundreds of vessels, each one containing a specific mystery of the natural world. There are the classic albarello jars, tall and waisted, painted in blue and white tin glaze, bearing Latin inscriptions in Gothic script salvia, rosmarinus, mentha. There are small wooden boxes with sliding lids stacked like bricks. There are glass bottles, blown thick and green, stoppered with cork and wax, holding syrups and tinctures that catch the firelight like liquid jewels. The air in this room is thick and visible, swimming with dust motes and the smoke from the fire, but it is the smell that truly defines the space. It is a dense, layered perfume of dried roots, resinous gums, beeswax and crushed spices. It smells of camphor and cloves, of dusty earth and sweet honey. It is a medicinal smell, but also a comforting one, signaling to anyone who enters that here, amid the chaos of nature, there is order, knowledge, and the potential for healing. The apothecary moves through this space with the ease of a man navigating his own mind, his woolen robes brushing softly against the counter as he prepares for the day's work. Above the main shop, accessed by a narrow creaking ladder, lies the drying loft. This is the secret heart of the operation, the place where the vibrant green life of the summer is suspended in time. The apothecary climbs up, his head bowing beneath the low, sloping rafters. The air up here is different, colder, drier, and intensely fragrant. The roof tiles are just inches above his head, and he can hear the wind sighing over the chimney pots. Hanging from the beams are hundreds of bunches of dried herbs, tied with hemp twine. They hang upside down, like a sleeping forest of grey and brown foliage. There is sage, its leaves now brittle and silver green, possessing a dusty, savory scent. There is thyme, forming tight, woody knots. There is hyssop, the ancient herb of cleansing, and horehound, the bitter remedy for the winter cough. As the apothecary walks through this hanging garden, his shoulders brush against the bundles, releasing a fresh wave of scent into the still air. Rustle, crinkle, snap. The sound of the dry leaves is like the whisper of paper. He reaches up to check a bundle of mullein, feeling the velvet texture of the leaves. They are perfectly dry, crisp to the touch. He nods in satisfaction. These plants were gathered months ago, under the warm sun of July, cut at the precise astrological moment when their sap was highest. Now they are batteries of stored sunlight, ready to release their energy into the dark, cold bodies of the villagers. He selects a few bunches, untying them from the rafters, and carries them carefully down the ladder, cradling the fragile leaves as if they were spun glass. Back in the warmth of the lower shop, the apothecary approaches his workbench. It is a massive slab of oak, worn smooth and hollowed in places by generations of scrubbing. The wood is stained with dark rings from wet bottles and scorch marks from hot crucibles. He clears a space for the morning's preparation. He retrieves his most essential tool, the mortar and pestle. This is not a small kitchen implement, but a heavy bell-shaped vessel cast from bronze, sitting on a leather pad to dampen the sound. He places the dried herbs into the bowl. He takes the heavy iron pestle in his hand. Clang, grind, clang. The rhythm begins. It is a slow, hypnotic beat that echoes through the quiet shop. He works with a circular motion, crushing the cellular structure of the leaves, breaking down the fibers to release the volatile oils held deep within. The scent explodes upwards, a sharp green medicinal aroma that clears the sinuses instantly. He pauses to inspect the powder. It must be fine, but not too fine. He works with a practiced patience, his arm moving with the memory of 1,000 similar mornings. Nearby sits his set of scales, a delicate balance of brass suspended from a central beam. He places tiny brass weights, scruples and drachms into one pan. They make a soft chink sound. He measures the powdered herb into the other pan, adding a pinch at a time until the needle floats in perfect equilibrium. In a world of uncertainty and superstition, this act of measurement is a ritual of precision, a way of imposing mathematical truth onto the wild variation of the natural world. The morning brings the first task of synthesis, the creation of an oxymel, a traditional syrup of vinegar and honey designed to cut through the phlegm of a winter cold. The apothecary places a ceramic pot on a tripod stand over the smaller side fire of the hearth. He pours in a measure of cider vinegar. The liquid is pale amber, smelling sharp and acidic, rising in a cloud of steam that makes the nose tingle. To this, he adds a generous pour of raw honey from a stoneware jar. The honey is thick, opaque, and crystalline, the color of old gold. It falls in a heavy, folding ribbon, settling at the bottom of the pot. He takes a wooden spoon and begins to stir. Swish, swirl, swish. The heat begins to melt the honey, blending the sweet and the sour into a unified golden liquid. Into this base, he sprinkles the powdered hyssop and horehound he has just ground. The powder sits on the surface for a moment before being folded into the syrup. He lowers the heat, allowing the mixture to simmer gently. This is a process of digestion, allowing the heat to extract the medicinal properties of the herbs into the sugar and acid. The shop fills with a warm, sweet-sour aroma that is incredibly comforting. It smells like a kitchen, but with a deeper, earthier undertone. The apothecary watches the bubbles rise, slow, lazy bloops of air breaking the surface. He is cooking medicine. He is transforming the harsh, bitter roots and the stinging vinegar into something soothing, a warm coat for the throat. He hums a low, tuneless melody as he stirs, watching the steam curl up into the dark rafters, waiting for the alchemy of the heat to finish its work. While the oxymel simmers, filling the room with its sweet-sour steam, The apothecary turns his attention to a more tactile preparation, the winter salve. This is a heavy occlusive ointment intended to be rubbed onto the chests of those suffering from the deep, rattling coughs of the season. He places a clean earthenware bowl near the fire to warm. Into this, he scoops a generous portion of rendered goose grease. The fat is pearly white and soft, melting quickly against the warm ceramic. To give the salve structure, he adds a disc of yellow beeswax, smelling faintly of the summer hive. As the two fats melt together, swirling into a golden oil, he prepares the active ingredients. He takes a jar of pine resin, sticky and amber-colored, gathered from the wounds of fir trees in the autumn. He adds a lump of this to the mixture. It dissolves slowly, releasing the intense, clean scent of the forest floor. Finally, he adds a few drops of oil of camphor. The smell is sharp, piercing, and cold, a scent that seems to open the lungs just by proximity. He stirs the mixture with a wooden spatula, round and round, round and round. The rhythm is steady. When it is fully blended, he pours the hot liquid into small, shallow wooden pots. He watches as it cools. The liquid turns opaque, solidifying into a smooth, creamy balm. It is a transformation of state, from a hot, clear oil to a cool, protective solid. This salve will act as a second skin, holding the heat of the body and releasing the vapors of the pine and camphor slowly through the night. A silent guardian against the cold that seeks to settle in the lungs. The quiet industry of the shop is interrupted by the sound of the world outside intruding upon the sanctuary. The heavy iron bell suspended above the door gives a single dull clang. The latch lifts with a metallic click, and the door swings inward. Immediately, a gust of freezing air rushes into the room, cutting through the warm, herbal atmosphere like a knife. It brings with it the smell of ozone and wet wool. A figure steps across the threshold, stomping their feet on the rush matting to dislodge the clumps of snow packed into the tread of their leather boots. It is a villager, a woman from the bakehouse down the lane, wrapped in layers of heavy, undyed wool. Her shawl is dusted with white flakes that do not melt in the cold air of the street, but turn to glistening droplets in the warmth of the shop. She brings with her the energy of the winter morning, brisk, urgent, and cold. The apothecary looks up from his work, wiping his hands on a linen cloth. He does not rush. The pace of the shop is deliberately slow. He nods a silent greeting. The woman unwinds her scarf, her face flushed red from the wind. She speaks in a hushed tone, as if the silence of the shop demands reverence. She describes the ailment. A child with a fever that burns at night, a throat that is raw and red. The apothecary listens, his head cocked slightly to the side. He is not just listening to the words, he is listening to the tone of her voice, the rattle of her own breathing, gathering clues from the environment she has brought with her. The exchange is ancient and transactional, a meeting of need and knowledge in the shelter of the timber-framed room. Having heard the complaint, the apothecary moves to the shelves behind the counter to select the remedy. He does not reach for the strong purges or the complex theriacs for a simple winter fever. He chooses the gentle, cooling herbs. He takes down a jar labeled Flores Sambuci, dried elderflowers. He opens the lid, and the scent of dry hay and summer pollen drifts out. He weighs a measure of the creamy white blossoms onto a square of parchment paper. To this, he adds a pinch of dried yarrow and a few leaves of peppermint. He folds the paper into a neat packet, tucking the ends in with practiced dexterity to seal the contents. He explains the preparation to the woman. Steep in water that has boiled but ceased to bubble. Let it stand for the time it takes to say 3 paternosters. Sweeten with honey. His voice is low and rhythmic, almost a chant. He then reaches for a small phial of the oxymel he prepared earlier, now cooled and bottled. He places the paper packet and the glass bottle on the wooden counter. The woman reaches into the purse at her belt. She places 2 silver pennies on the wood. Clink, clink. The sound of the metal is sharp against the oak. The transaction is complete. She takes the medicine, tucking it deep into the folds of her cloak to keep it safe. She turns and exits, the door opening once more to admit the winter chill before sealing the shop back into its warm, scented isolation. The apothecary is alone again, left with the coin and the lingering smell of wet wool and cold air. With the customer gone, the apothecary turns to the administrative ritual that underpins his trade, the keeping of the daybook. He moves to a tall, sloping desk positioned near the window to catch the pale grey light of the snowy afternoon. On the desk lies a large volume bound in pigskin, its corners reinforced with brass. He opens it to the current page. The paper is thick, creamy rag paper, textured and uneven. He picks up his quill, a goose feather stripped of its lower barbs, and dips the nib into a horn inkwell filled with iron gall ink. The ink is a deep, lustrous black that will fade to brown over the centuries. He begins to write. Scritch, scratch, scritch. The sound of the quill on the textured paper is loud in the silence. He records the date, the 20th day of January, in the year of our Lord 1542. He records the name of the woman, the nature of the remedy dispensed, and the sum received. His handwriting is a tight Gothic cursive, full of sharp angles and thick downstrokes. He notes the expenditure of the elderflowers and the honey, keeping a mental tally of his stock. This act of writing is a grounding exercise. It transforms the fluid, human interactions of the morning into fixed, permanent data. He pauses, looking at the ink glistening wet on the page, waiting for it to dry. He sprinkles a pinch of fine sand, pounce, over the wet letters to absorb the excess ink, then blows it away. Whoosh! The sand scatters across the desk. The entry is sealed. It is a small mark of order in a chaotic world, a proof that business was done, that life continues despite the snow. The church bell in the distance tolls the hour of midday, 12 heavy, muffled strokes that vibrate through the wooden frame of the shop. It is time for the midday pause. The apothecary sets down his tools and moves to a small stool set close to the fire. He retrieves his meal from a cloth bag. It is simple peasant fare, but in the depths of winter it feels like a feast. He has a loaf of dense, dark rye bread, a wedge of hard cheese that smells of the cellar, and a crisp, cold apple stored since the autumn harvest. He takes a small knife from his belt and slices the cheese. Slice. He eats slowly, staring into the flames of the apple wood fire. He watches the logs burn down, the bark curling and glowing red before turning to grey ash. He chews the bread, which is tough and filling. He pours a cup of small beer from a jug, warming it slightly near the hearth before drinking. It is a moment of pure animal comfort. He is warm, he is fed, and he is safe. He looks towards the window. Through the thick, distorted glass of the diamond panes, he can see the snow beginning to fall again. It falls in large, lazy flakes, spiraling down from a leaden sky. It is piling up on the window ledge, creeping up the glass, slowly sealing the shop off from the street. The world outside is white and silent and cold. The world inside is orange and warm and scented. He feels a deep sense of contentment in this contrast. He is the keeper of the hearth, the watcher of the winter, secure in his wooden box while the elements rage softly outside. The meal is finished, and the crumbs are swept into the fire, vanishing in tiny sparks. The apothecary turns his attention to the corner of the laboratory dedicated to the art of distillation. Here sits the alembic, a beautiful apparatus of beaten copper that gleams with a dull reddish luster in the firelight. It consists of the cucurbit, the gourd-shaped vessel at the bottom, and the helm, the domed lid with a long, graceful spout that resembles the neck of a swan. Today he is distilling a water of rosemary, intended to be sprinkled in sick rooms to purify the stagnant air. He fills the cucurbit with fresh spring water and handfuls of dried rosemary needles. As he packs the herbs, the sharp pine-like scent releases into the air, waking the senses. He seals the joint between the pot and the lid with a paste made of flour and water, a primitive gasket that hardens with heat to prevent the precious steam from escaping. He lights a small charcoal furnace beneath the vessel. It is a slow, gentle heat. He must wait for the water to boil, for the steam to rise, carrying the volatile essence of the rosemary up into the cool copper helm. There, it will condense, turning back into liquid, and run down the long spout into a receiving flask. Drip, drip, drip. The process is slow and rhythmic. The apothecary pulls up a stool and watches. He is capturing the soul of the plant. The liquid that collects in the glass receiver is clear as crystal, but on the surface floats a thin, shimmering film of essential oil. The room fills with the sound of the bubbling water and the intense, clean fragrance of the herb. It is a process of purification, separating the gross matter of the plant from its spiritual essence, a quiet alchemy that requires nothing but fire, water, and time. While the still murmurs in the corner, the apothecary moves to the back of the shop, where the root vegetables of the medicine world are stored. These are the heavy hitters of the winter pharmacopoeia, roots that draw their strength from the deep earth. They are stored in large wooden crates filled with damp sand to keep them from shriveling. He plunges his hands into the cool, gritty sand. Scrape, shift, rustle. His fingers close around a large, knobby root. Elecampane. He pulls it free, shaking off the loose grains of sand which fall back into the box with a soft hissing sound. The root is brown and ugly, resembling a twisted parsnip, but it smells profound, a mixture of violet flowers and wet soil. He carries it to the washing trough. He scrubs it with a stiff bristle brush under cold water until the skin is clean. Scrub, scrub, splash. Then he uses a heavy iron knife to slice the root. The flesh inside is white and fleshy. Chop, chop, chop. The sound is solid and percussive. He is preparing a decoction, a medicine made by boiling hard materials for a long time. These roots will be simmered until the water turns dark and thick, extracting the mucilage that soothes the bronchial tubes. The work is physical and repetitive. The repetitive motion of the knife is meditative. He focuses entirely on the thickness of the slices, ensuring they are uniform so they cook evenly. There is a connection here to the peasant cooking of the village. He is essentially making a very potent, very specific soup. The pile of white discs grows on the board, a small mountain of raw medicine waiting for the fire. The afternoon light begins to slant through the windows, casting long, distorted rectangles of grey on the floorboards. The apothecary transitions to a task that requires a delicate touch, the crafting of pectoral lozenges. Sugar is a rare and expensive luxury, kept in a locking spice chest, but for a cough that keeps a patient awake all night, it is the only vehicle that soothes. He unlocks the chest and retrieves a cone of white sugar, wrapped in blue paper. He uses a pair of iron nippers to break off a chunk, then grinds it to a fine dust in the mortar. Crunch, grind, powder. To this white dust he adds gum tragacanth, a sap that will bind the mixture, and a concentrated tincture of black licorice. He adds a few drops of rose water. He works the mixture with his hands, kneading it like a baker kneading dough. It is sticky and dark, smelling of anise and flowers. He rolls it out onto a slab of cold marble, which prevents the paste from sticking. He uses a rolling pin made of smooth boxwood. Roll, flatten, turn. When the sheet of paste is thin and even, he takes a small round tin cutter. He presses it into the dough. Punch, lift, punch. He cuts out dozens of small, perfect circles. He lays them out on a wooden tray lined with parchment to dry. These little dark discs are jewels of relief. They represent a significant cost, but they are a small luxury that makes the sickness bearable. The repetition of the cutting, the smell of the sugar, and the orderliness of the rows on the tray bring a sense of satisfying geometry to the cluttered shop. In a shadowed alcove away from the direct heat of the fire, the apothecary keeps a large porcelain jar covered with a linen cloth tied with twine. This is the home of the leeches, the living instruments of his trade. Even in the depth of winter they must be tended. He unties the string and lifts the cloth. Inside, the water is clear and cool. The leeches are dark, ribbon-like shapes, resting dormant at the bottom of the jar. They are not the monsters of folklore, but delicate creatures, sensitive to vibration and temperature. The apothecary checks their health. If they are lively and responsive, they are good. If they are sluggish or knotted, they are sick. He notices the water has grown slightly cloudy. It is time for a change. He brings a pitcher of fresh rainwater, which he has allowed to stand until it reaches the ambient temperature of the room. He carefully pours off the old water into a bucket, using a sieve to ensure no valuable livestock is lost. The leeches writhe gently in the shallow remainder. He pours in the fresh water. Splash. Swirl. The creatures uncoil, swimming with a graceful, undulating motion, exploring their renewed environment. He watches them for a moment. They are Hirudo medicinalis, partners in the balancing of the humours. In a world where blood is the vehicle of the soul and the seat of fever, these silent swimmers are the surgeons that remove the excess. He replaces the linen cloth and ties the knot securely. The task is done. The jar sits quiet and white in the shadows, a reservoir of potential healing waiting for the spring or a desperate case of pleurisy. The day begins to wane, the grey light outside deepening to the blue of the early twilight. The snow has not stopped, it has only thickened, piling up against the lower panes of the window, muffling the world even further. The apothecary decides to use the remaining light for study. He wipes down the oak counter and retrieves a large volume from the shelf. A copy of De Historia Stirpium by Leonhard Fuchs. It is a heavy book, bound in calfskin, filled with detailed woodcuts of plants. He carries it to the desk by the window. He opens the cover. Creak, rustle. The smell of old paper and leather rises to meet him. He turns the pages carefully. He is looking for the entry on Tussilago farfara, coltsfoot. He finds the page. The illustration is stark black ink on creamy paper, showing the scaly stem and the yellow flower. He reads the Latin text, his finger tracing the lines. Even though he knows the plant by heart, knows where it grows by the river and when to harvest it, he finds comfort in the authority of the text. It confirms his knowledge. It connects his solitary practice in this snowbound village to the great universities of Padua and Paris. He compares the drawing in the book to a dried specimen he pulls from a drawer. He examines the dried leaf against the inked leaf. This quiet verification is the intellectual anchor of his life. He reads until the words begin to swim in the dim light, absorbing the wisdom of the ancients, while the fire crackles softly across the room and the snow buries the village in silence. The light in the shop has now faded to a point where the written word is no longer decipherable without aid. The apothecary closes the great book, thud, and moves to bring light to his domain. He does not use the expensive beeswax candles sold to the church. Those are for the altar. Instead, he uses rushlights, the humble illumination of the peasantry. He takes a long, dried stalk of the soft rush Juncus effusus, which he has previously peeled and soaked in rendered mutton fat. He fixes the rush into a wrought iron holder that stands on the counter. He takes a spill, a thin strip of wood, from the jar on the mantel and lights it from the fire. He carries the small flame to the rush. The fat sizzles slightly, and a small, wavering yellow flame springs to life. It is not a bright light. It is smoky and dim, casting long dancing shadows that make the jars on the shelves seem to move and whisper. He lights another rush by the door and a tallow candle in a tin lantern by the workbench. The shop transforms. The corners disappear into darkness. The atmosphere becomes intimate and enclosed. The smell of the burning mutton fat mixes with the herbal scents, adding a savory, domestic note. The apothecary moves through these pools of light, a figure of shadow and illumination. This is the time of day for thinking work, for the mental sorting of inventory and the planning of the next day's brewing. The fire throws a warm orange glow across the floorboards, fighting back the blue chill of the window. The shop feels smaller now, a cozy cave of industry carved out of the winter night. With the lights burning, the apothecary returns to the hearth to tend the fire, the beating heart of the shop. The apple wood has burned down to a bed of glowing red coals, pulsing with heat. He needs to bank it up for the evening. He goes to the wood piles stacked neatly against the wall. He selects a large Yule log, a knotty piece of oak that has been drying in the shed for 2 years. It is heavy and dense as stone. He heaves it onto the andirons. Thump, crackle, hit. A shower of sparks flies up the chimney, vanishing into the soot-darkened throat of the flue. The log settles, crushing the coals beneath it. Smoke begins to curl around the bark, smelling of tannins and earth. The apothecary takes a pair of iron tongs and rearranges the smaller brands, building a structure that will allow the air to flow and the fire to catch the new fuel slowly. He stands there for a moment, warming his back, his hands clasped behind him. The heat radiates through his woolen tunic, soothing the muscles of his lower back. The fire is more than just a heat source. It is a companion. It is a living thing that eats and breathes and sleeps. He watches the flames begin to lick at the oak, turning from orange to blue at the base. The sound of the fire, the snap of the sap, the roar of the draft is the soundtrack of his winter. It is a constant, comforting presence that pushes back the silence of the snow and keeps the frost from creeping under the door. From the shadows of the back room comes a soft, rhythmic sound. Scrape, pause, scrape. It is the shop's mouser, a large, scarred tabby cat named Galen. He emerges from behind a sack of dried valerian root, stretching his limbs in a long, luxurious arch. He walks to the apothecary, weaving between his legs, rubbing his flank against the rough wool of the robe. Purr, purr, purr. The sound is deep and resonant, a vibration that can be felt through the cloth. The apothecary reaches down and scratches the cat behind the ears. The fur is thick and cold on the surface, but warm underneath. Galen is a working animal, essential for protecting the grain and the herbs from the mice that seek shelter from the cold. But in the evening, he becomes a domestic comfort. He jumps up onto the stool by the fire, circling 3 times before settling into a tight ball, tucking his nose under his tail. The presence of the animal adds a layer of life to the shop. It softens the austere atmosphere of glass and ceramic. The apothecary watches the cat sleep, envying the creature's ability to completely relax, to simply exist in the warmth, without worry of fevers or tinctures. The cat's rhythmic breathing matches the flickering of the fire, a dual pulse of life in the quiet room. A sudden, heavy knocking on the door shatters the peace. Bang, bang, bang. It is not the polite tap of a customer, but the urgent summons of authority. The apothecary moves to the door and slides the bolt. He opens it to reveal a servant from the manor house, a young man wearing the livery of the local lord, shivering violently in the snow. He holds a lantern that swings in the wind, casting wild shadows on the snowdrifts. He speaks quickly, his breath coming in clouds of steam. The lord is suffering from the gout, a painful swelling of the joints brought on by rich living and winter inactivity. He demands a poultice immediately. The apothecary nods. He does not panic. He knows this ailment well. He invites the boy into the entryway to warm himself while he prepares the remedy. He moves to the shelves with purpose. Gout requires heat and drawing agents. He takes a jar of dried mustard seed. He takes a handful of dried hops for pain relief. He grinds them together in the mortar. Crunch, grind, crunch, working faster now. He mixes the powder with hot vinegar and rye flour to form a thick, pungent paste. He spreads the paste onto a piece of clean linen cloth. He folds the cloth over, creating a warm, damp packet that smells sharp enough to make the eyes water. He wraps the poultice in a piece of oiled parchment to keep it moist. He hands the package to the servant, along with instructions for application. The boy pays with a silver shilling, a significant sum, and rushes back out into the night. The door closes. The silence returns, but the energy of the room has shifted. The outside world has reached in with its demands, reminding the apothecary that his solitude is always provisional, subject to the pains of the powerful. The apothecary returns to his workbench, but his focus has shifted. The interruption has broken the flow of his evening. He decides to engage in a task of preservation that requires little thought but steady hands, waxing corks. In the humid winter air, the cork stoppers of his bottles can rot or shrink, allowing the precious spirits to evaporate. To prevent this, he seals them with sealing wax. He lights a stick of red wax in the flame of the rushlight. It melts, dripping hot scarlet tears. He takes a bottle of aqua vitae, distilled spirits infused with lemon peel. He holds the neck of the bottle. He drips the wax over the cork and the glass rim. Drip, swirl, seal. The wax hardens almost instantly, forming a glossy, airtight cap. He stamps the top with his personal seal, a brass die engraved with a mortar and pestle. Press. The image is left crisp and clear in the red wax. He moves to the next bottle and the next. It is a satisfying, repetitive job. The smell of the hot wax is resinous and pleasant. The row of sealed bottles grows, a line of red-capped soldiers guarding their liquid contents. This sealing is a promise of longevity. It ensures that the medicine made today will still be potent in 10 years. It is a fight against entropy, against the spoilage that claims all organic things. He works methodically, sealing the summer into the glass, defying the decay of the winter with a shell of red wax. In the shadowed recesses of the shop, furthest from the fire, sit the great stoneware demijohns. These are the vessels of deep time, containing the great macerations, roots and barks that must soak in high-proof spirits for a full lunar cycle or more to surrender their medicinal virtues. The apothecary approaches them with the reverence of a cellar master tending his wine. He grips the neck of a heavy jar labeled Radix Gentianae, gentian root, the supreme bitter tonic for the stomach. He tilts the vessel. Slosh, gurgle, swirl. He rocks it gently back and forth. This daily rousing is essential. It ensures that the solvent, the menstruum, circulates fully around the dense plant matter, extracting every ounce of the active principle. The sound of the liquid moving inside the pottery is a heavy, viscous sound. He moves to the next jar, which holds the bark of the cinchona tree, a rare and expensive import from the New World that fights the ague. He gives it a firm shake. The sediment rises, a dark cloud swirling in the amber fluid. This is medicine made in the dark, a slow chemical conversation between the spirit and the wood. There is no heat involved here, only the patient, dissolving power of alcohol and time. He checks the stoppers, ensuring they are tight against evaporation. These jars are his capital, his investment in the health of the village for the coming year. He pats the cool flank of the stoneware jar, satisfied that the silent work of extraction is proceeding according to the laws of nature, transforming the hard, dead roots into the liquid of life. Before he can ascend to his rest, the apothecary must perform the ritual of self-purification. He lives in daily contact with the sick, breathing the same air as the fevered and the coughing. In the 16th century, the germ theory is unknown, but the fear of miasma, bad air, is visceral. He moved to a basin of hammered pewter set on a side table. He pours water from a ewer, the water cold and shocking to the touch. Into this he splashes a generous measure of 4 thieves' vinegar. This is a potent concoction of vinegar infused with garlic, rosemary, sage, and camphor, legendary for its protective powers against the plague. The smell is incredibly pungent, a sharp, acidic slap that clears the head instantly. He plunges his hands into the basin. Splash! Scrub! He washes his hands and his forearms vigorously, scrubbing the skin until it is red. He cups the water and splashes his face, screwing his eyes shut against the sting of the vinegar. It is a harsh cleansing, stripping away the oils and the smells of the day, the soot, the wax, the sickroom odors. He dries himself on a piece of rough, undyed linen toweling. The fabric is coarse, exfoliating the skin. He feels clean, scoured, and defended. The scent of the vinegar clings to him, a chemical shield that he will carry into his sleep. It is the smell of safety, the olfactory armor of the healer who must touch the unclean and yet remain whole. The shop is now silent, save for the settling of the fire. The apothecary moves to the front window. Outside, the street is empty and black, the snow reflecting the faint starlight. He lifts the heavy wooden shutters from their daytime resting place against the wall. He slots them into the window frame. Thud, slide, click. The view of the snow is cut off instantly. He secures them with an iron crossbar, dropping it into the brackets with a heavy metallic clank. The shop feels suddenly smaller and more enclosed. He moves to the main door. He checks the latch. He lifts the great oak bar, polished smooth by years of use, and drops it across the door. Boom. It is a sound of finality. The world is locked out. The cold, the thieves, the wolves, and the wandering spirits of the winter night are all on the other side of 3 inches of seasoned oak. He walks the perimeter of the room, checking the back door and the cellar hatch. This is the nightly beating of the bounds, a physical verification of his security. In a village without streetlights or police, the safety of the home depends entirely on the thickness of the wood and the strength of the iron. He feels the draft stop as the last gap is sealed. The air in the shop becomes still and pressurized, holding the heat of the fire like a precious fluid. He is sealed in his wooden box, a warm, safe capsule floating in the ocean of the winter night. With the shop secured, the apothecary prepares to cross the threshold between his public life and his private sanctuary. He takes the rushlight holder in his left hand, sheltering the fragile flame with his right palm. He moves to the narrow staircase that leads to the upper floor. The stairs are steep and twisting, made of unpolished elm that creaks underfoot. Creak, step, creak. As he ascends, he passes through the thermal layer. The warm air of the shop, rising and trapped by the ceiling, gives way to the chill of the unheated upper story. The temperature drops 10 degrees in 10 steps. He shivers slightly, pulling his woolen robe tighter around his chest. The landing at the top is dark, the shadows stretching long and thin from the flickering rushlight. He passes the door to the drying loft, catching a faint whiff of cold sage and lavender leaking from the cracks. He reaches the door to his bedchamber. It is a low plank door with a simple latch. He lifts it, click, and pushes it open. The room beyond is a chamber of blue shadows and silence. The window here is small, just a slit in the wall, allowing a single beam of moonlight to fall across the floorboards. The air smells of lavender sachets and cold stone. It is a Spartan space, containing only a chest, a washstand, and the great 4-poster bed that dominates the room. This is the inner sanctum, the place where the healer lays down his burden and becomes merely a man seeking rest in the heart of the winter. The bed is the most important piece of furniture in the house, a massive structure of dark oak hung with heavy curtains of green wool. But on a night like this, the sheets inside will be freezing, possessing a damp chill that sucks the heat from the body. The apothecary must prepare his nest. He sets the rushlight on the chest and returns to the landing, where a long-handled brass warming pan hangs on a hook. He takes it down, clatter, ring, and carries it back downstairs to the dying fire. He opens the hinged lid of the pan. He uses the tongs to select 3 or 4 glowing red coals from the heart of the fire. He drops them into the pan. Hiss, crackle. He adds a few applewood chips to feed the empty. He closes the lid and latches it. He carries the pan, now radiating a fierce heat, back up the stairs. In the bedroom, he pulls back the heavy bed curtains. He lifts the coverlet and the linen sheets. He slides the warming pan into the bed. Swish, slide. He moves it up and down the mattress, ironing the sheets from the inside. The sound of the brass sliding on the linen is soft and dry. Shh, shh. A smell of toasted fabric and wood smoke rises from the bed. He warms the foot of the bed, then the center, then the pillow area. He is chasing away the frost. He leaves the pan in the bed for a moment to steep the heat into the feathers of the mattress. The bed is now a pocket of warmth, a heated cave waiting to receive him. It is the ultimate luxury of the 16th century, to enter a warm bed in a cold house. The warming pan is withdrawn, sliding out from the sheets with a faint hiss of friction, leaving behind a pocket of radiant heat that smells of toasted linen and faint smoke. The apothecary sets the pan on the stone hearth of the unlit bedroom fireplace to cool. Now, he must brave the few seconds of exposure. He unties the belt of his woolen robe, letting the heavy fabric fall to the floor. The air of the bedroom attacks instantly, a sharp, physical cold that pricks the skin and raises the hairs on his arms. He is wearing a long nightshirt of thick, unbleached linen that reaches his ankles. He moves quickly but calmly to the side of the bed. He climbs up the small wooden step and slips between the curtains. He slides his legs down into the space the pan has created. The sensation is exquisite. The shock of the cold air is instantly replaced by the enveloping warmth of the mattress. The feathers of the goose-down bed conform to his weight, sinking and rising around him. He pulls the heavy wool coverlets up to his chin. He reaches out and extinguishes the rushlight with a quick pinch of his fingers. Snuff. The room plunges into darkness. He draws the heavy green curtains of the bed closed, sealing the gap. He is now contained within a room within a room. The draft is cut off. The warmth of his body and the residual heat of the pan are trapped inside the velvet box. The air inside the curtains is still and begins to warm rapidly, creating a microclimate of comfort that is entirely separate from the freezing reality of the house. He exhales a long, shuddering breath, feeling the tension of the winter day finally leave his muscles as the heat penetrates his bones. Inside the enclosed space of the box bed, the acoustic world changes completely. The heavy wool curtains act as sound baffles, dampening the noises of the house to a distant murmur. The wind outside, which was a howling presence in the shop, is now just a faint, rhythmic vibration in the timber frame. The apothecary lies on his back, staring up into the absolute blackness of the canopy. He listens to the silence. It is not an empty silence, but a living one. He hears the settling of the house, the creak of a floorboard as the wood contracts in the cold, the tick of a beam adjusting to the load of the snow on the roof. These are the sounds of the house doing its work, holding its shape against the weight of the winter. He feels the texture of the pillow beneath his head. It is not filled with feathers, but with dried hops and lavender. A sleeping pillow designed to induce drowsiness. As the warmth of his head heats the herbs, they release a subtle, earthy fragrance. It smells of the summer harvest, of dry fields and sunshine. He breathes it in deeply. In and out, in and out. The scent is a chemical lullaby, slowing his heart rate, heavying his eyelids. He adjusts his position, seeking the coolest part of the pillow with his cheek. The linen is smooth and dry. He is floating in the dark, suspended in a capsule of warmth and herbal scent, protected by layers of wood, wool, and stone from the biting frost that rules the world outside. As the heat of the bed relaxes his body, the apothecary begins the nightly ritual of quieting the mind. In the silence, the faces of the day's patients drift before his inner eye. He sees the flushed face of the child, the pained grimace of the Lord's servant, the worry of the baker's wife. In the 16th century, the mind and the body are not seen as separate. Thoughts are movements of the animal spirits through the nerves. To sleep, he must calm these spirits, He consciously releases each. He imagines the oxymel soothing the child's throat. He imagines the poultice drawing the fire from the Lord's toe. He has done what his art allows. The rest is in the hands of God and the nature of the body. He whispers a quiet prayer into the darkness, a Latin cadence that has been spoken by healers for centuries. Custodi nos, Domine, keep us, Lord. The rhythm of the words matches the rhythm of his breathing. He focuses on the sensation of his own humors, the blood, the phlegm, the bile. He imagines them settling into a balanced, placid lake within him. He feels his feet becoming heavy, sinking into the mattress. He feels his hands uncurling, the fingers losing their grip on the day. The mental inventory lists are erased. The weights and measures are put away. The Latin names of the plants fade into the background. He is no longer the apothecary. He is simply a breathing creature, seeking the restorative oblivion of the night. While the master of the house drifts towards sleep, the shop downstairs enters its own phase of nocturnal existence. The fire in the hearth has died down to a bed of deep, pulsing embers, buried under the insulating layer of the white ash from the Yule log. It emits a low, steady red glow that barely illuminates the hearthstones. The heat radiates out, keeping the room just above freezing. In this stillness, the smells of the shop change. The sharp, volatile top notes of the camphor and mint dissipate, leaving behind the heavier base notes of the roots and resins. The room smells of earth, old wood, and lingering beeswax. On the shelves, the hundreds of jars and bottles stand sentinel. They catch the faint red glint of the embers. A flash of glass here, a shine of ceramic there. They are a silent audience. Upstairs, in the drying loft, the cold has stiffened the hanging herbs. A draught from under the eaves moves through them, causing the dry bunches to sway ever so slightly. Swish, rustle, swish. It sounds like a dry paper forest breathing. Galen the cat wakes from his nap by the fire. He stretches his claws extending into the wood of the stool. He jumps down, thump, landing softly on the rush matting. He begins his patrol. He moves like a shadow, winding through the legs of the workbench, checking the grain sacks, sniffing the air for the scent of a mouse. He is the guardian of the inventory, the night watchman of the pharmacy, moving with silent, predatory grace through the scented dark. Expand your awareness now, moving beyond the walls of the timber-framed house and out into the village itself. The snow has continued to fall heavily for hours, and the world has been transformed. The street is gone, replaced by a smooth, unbroken river of white. The cobblestones are buried under 2 feet of powder. The village is a collection of dark shapes huddled together for warmth. There are no lights visible, candles are too precious to burn for no reason, and the shutters are all closed tight. The houses look like sleeping beasts, their thatched roofs pulled low over their eyes, topped with thick white caps of snow. Smoke rises lazily from the chimneys, grey pillars climbing straight up into the windless night sky, marking the location of the hearths that keep the families alive. The silence is profound. The snow dampens all sound, absorbing the noise of the wind and the animals. There is no sound of wheels, no cry of the watchman, no barking of dogs. It is a white silence, heavy and absolute. The village is in a state of hibernation. The well in the square is frozen, a sculpture of ice. The church tower stands tall and black against the grey sky, the bell silent in its belfry. It is a moment of suspended animation, where the human struggle for survival is paused, hidden away behind walls of wattle and daub, waiting for the sun to return and melt the path to the door. The winter holds the village in its cold, protective palm, forcing the world to stop, to rest, and to dream. Beneath the sleeping shop and the frozen street lies the deepest layer of the apothecary's domain, the cellar. Accessed by a trapdoor behind the main counter, this subterranean chamber is cut directly into the bedrock of the village. While the world above fluctuates between the freezing winds of winter and the heat of summer, The cellar exists in a state of eternal, cool stability. The temperature here never changes. It is the constant temperature of the earth itself. The air is heavy and damp, smelling of wet stone, limestone dust, and the sweet fermenting scent of stored apples. Along one wall, huge barrels of cider and ale rest on wooden cradles. They are the liquid calories of the household. In the corners, bins of root vegetables, turnips, parsnips, and beets sit in the dark, their hairy roots reaching out into the silence. Spiders weave thick, undisturbed webs between the beams, the guardians of the dark. This space is the anchor of the house. It is the larder that ensures survival when the snow is too deep to travel to the market. It is a place of profound stillness, where the passage of time is measured not by the ticking of a clock, but by the slow aging of the wine and the gradual softening of the apples. The heavy oak beams that support the ceiling groan under the weight of the shop above, a low, earthy sound that speaks of the burden of the house. Here, in the absolute dark, the life of the earth continues, a dormant energy waiting to be drawn up into the light. The cellar is the root system of the building, holding the apothecary and his trade firm against the heaving of the frost-hardened ground. In the warmth of the box bed upstairs, the apothecary's mind has drifted far away from the snow-buried village. He is walking through the landscape of his dreams, a vision of the hortus medicus, the medicinal garden, in the height of midsummer. In this dream, the sun is a physical weight on his shoulders, warm and golden. The air is alive with the buzzing of fat, furry bumblebees moving between the blooms. He sees rows of calendula, their petals a shocking, vibrant orange against the green foliage. He sees the tall, purple spikes of foxglove standing like sentinels. He smells the intoxicating perfume of the damask roses, heavy and sweet, releasing their oils in the heat of the afternoon. He reaches out to touch a leaf of lemon balm, and his fingers come away smelling of citrus and sunshine. The snow of the reality is forgotten. Here there is only growth and abundance. He walks slowly down the gravel paths, checking the seed heads of the poppies, listening to the song of the skylark high above. This dream is a necessity for his spirit. It is the memory of the green world that sustains him through the white monotony of the winter. It connects him to the cycle of the seasons, reminding him that the ice is temporary and that the sap will rise again. He wanders through this internal Eden, a gardener of the soul, harvesting the peace and the light that he will need when he wakes to the grey light of the January dawn. The night deepens, moving into the stretch of hours known as the wolf hour, the time between 3 and 4 in the morning, when the night is at its absolute nadir. The fire in the hearth downstairs has finally collapsed into a pile of grey ash, retaining only a faint pulsing core of heat. The cold of the winter begins to reclaim the house. It creeps through the microscopic gaps in the window frames, sliding across the floorboards like an invisible mist. It paints delicate, fern-like patterns of frost on the inside of the diamond-paned windows. These ice flowers grow silently, crystal by crystal, turning the glass into a masterpiece of frozen geometry. The timber frame of the house contracts in the deepening chill, emitting sharp, sudden cracks. Pop, crack, that echo like pistol shots in the silence. The wind outside has shifted, coming now from the north, bringing a harder, drier cold. It whistles softly through the eaves, a lonely, high-pitched sound. Inside the bed curtains, the apothecary sleeps on, oblivious to the drop in temperature, protected by his microclimate of feathers and wool. But the house feels it. The water in the ewer on the washstand begins to glaze over with a thin skin of ice. The oil in the lamps thickens. The world is held in a suspended state of cryostasis, brittle and hard, waiting for the first grey promise of the sun to break the grip of the ice. The first sign of the morning is not light, but sound. From the far end of the village, a rooster crows. a ragged, muffled sound that cuts through the blanket of snow. It is the signal that the wheel has turned. Inside the box bed, the apothecary stirs. His internal clock, tuned to the rhythm of the village, pulls him gently from the garden of his dreams. He opens his eyes. The darkness inside the curtains is absolute. He lies there for a moment, savoring the warmth. He can feel the cold of the room pressing against the heavy wool curtains, waiting to rush in. He takes a breath. The air inside the bed is warm, but as he exhales, he can feel the moisture of his breath condensing on the cooler fabric of the canopy. He stretches his legs, his toes finding a cold spot at the bottom of the mattress before retreating to the warm center. This moment of transition is the hardest part of the day. To leave the womb of the bed is to enter the battle against the winter. He sits up, the goose-down duvet sliding off his chest. He shivers involuntarily. He reaches for the curtain. Swish, he parts the wool. The grey, watery light of the pre-dawn filters into the room. The air hits him like a bucket of cold water. He moves quickly now, driven by the cold. He swings his legs out, his feet finding the sheepskin rug he placed on the floor the night before. He grabs his robe, wrapping the heavy wool around him like armor, tying the belt tight to trap his body heat. The day has begun. The apothecary descends the creaking stairs to the main shop, his breath clouding in the air before him. The shop is dim and freezing, the smell of the herbs sharpened by the cold. His first and most vital task is the resurrection of the fire. He approaches the great stone hearth. It looks dead, a heap of grey and white powder, but he knows better. He takes the heavy iron poker. He carefully scrapes away the top layer of insulating ash. Scrape, sift, push. There, buried deep in the heart of the pile, is the seed fire. A few glowing cherry-red embers that have survived the night. They pulse faintly when exposed to the air. He smiles. The soul of the house is still alive. He places a handful of dry birch bark and small twigs, kindling, directly onto the coals. He takes the leather bellows hanging from the mantel. He aims the nozzle at the embers. Squeeze, wheeze, squeeze. A stream of air hits the coals. They glow brighter, turning from red to orange to white. The heat touches the birch bark. Crackle, pop. A small yellow flame jumps to life, hungry and eager. He feeds it larger sticks, then a split log of apple wood. The fire catches, growing rapidly, sending waves of radiant heat washing out into the room. The chimney draught establishes itself with a low roar. The light returns to the shop, chasing the blue shadows back into the corners. The apothecary stands before the blaze, holding his hands out to the flames, washing them in the heat. The hearth is awake. The danger of the freezing night is past. The heart of the shop is beating once more, with the fire now crackling happily in the hearth, sending waves of life-giving heat into the stagnant air of the shop. The apothecary turns to the domestic necessities of the morning. He moves to the water barrel that stands in the corner, as he expected. The surface is sealed with a thick lid of ice. He takes the iron ladle and strikes it. Crack! The sound is sharp and glassy. He breaks the crust into shards, pushing them down into the black water beneath. He scoops out a measure of the freezing liquid and pours it into a small iron pot, which he sets upon the trivet over the fire. It is time for the breaking of the fast. He takes a handful of rolled oats from a linen sack, rough, dusty grains that smell of the summer fields. He sprinkles them into the water. Hiss. He adds a pinch of salt. He stands by the fire, stirring the pot with a wooden spurtle. Round and round, round and round. The water begins to thicken, turning into a pale, creamy gruel. The smell of the cooking oats is mild and comforting, a foundational scent of the peasant winter. It steams gently, the vapor carrying the warmth into the room. He ladles the porridge into a wooden bowl. To this he adds a spoonful of the dark, rich honey from his store, and a small knob of butter that melts instantly into a golden pool on the surface. He eats standing up, leaning against the warm stones of the chimney breast. The food is hot and heavy. He can feel it traveling down his gullet, a physical column of heat that settles in his stomach, radiating warmth from the inside out. It is simple fuel, burning slow and long, armoring his body against the cold work of the day that lies ahead. Hunger satisfied, the apothecary prepares to reconnect with the world. He moves to the front of the shop to perform the unsealing. He lifts the heavy iron bar from the door heave, plank, and leans it against the wall. He draws back the bolt. He opens the door. It sticks for a moment, frozen to the frame, before giving way with a tearing sound of ice breaking. Crunch, creak. The door swings inward, and the morning light floods the shop. It is a blinding, brilliant white. The snow has stopped falling, and the sky is a high, piercing blue, utterly clear and cold. The street outside has been transformed into a strange, undulating landscape of white dunes. The drifts are piled high against the wall, reaching nearly to the window ledge. The air that rushes in is pure and sharp, smelling of absolutely nothing but coldness. It cleanses the lungs instantly. The apothecary takes a broad-bladed wooden shovel from the corner. He steps out onto the threshold. He begins to clear a path. Scrape, toss, thud. The snow is dry and powdery, flying like dust in the wind. He carves a canyon through the drift, revealing the cobblestones beneath, which look black and wet against the white walls of the trench. He clears a space in front of the door, a small stage for the day's commerce. He looks up and down the street. Smoke is rising straight up from every chimney in the village, a forest of grey pillars supporting the sky. A dog barks in the distance, the sound carrying for miles in the thin air. The village is waking up, digging itself out, reclaiming its territory from the winter. Back inside, with the door closed against the biting chill, the apothecary decides to warm his blood through labor. He moves to the workbench and selects a task that requires vigor, the grinding of ginger. This root, imported at great cost from the hot lands of the East, is the perfect antidote to the frozen damp of the English winter. He takes the dried rhizomes from a ceramic jar. They are knobby, hard as wood, and grey on the outside. He breaks them into smaller pieces with a hammer. Crack, snap, releasing a burst of spicy, lemony dust. He places the fragments into the great bronze mortar. He grasps the heavy iron pestle with both hands. Clang, grind, clang. He puts his back into the work, using the weight of his shoulders to crush the hard root. The sound is rhythmic and loud, ringing through the shop. As he works, the friction generates heat. The scent of the ginger fills the air, powerful and stimulating. It burns the nose pleasantly, waking the senses, simulating the heat of the sun. His breath comes faster. He can feel the blood pumping in his arms, the stiffness of the cold morning leaving his joints. He is creating internal fire. The powder that results is a rich golden brown smelling of distant spice markets and desert heat. He scrapes it into a jar. This powder will be used today for Hippocras spiced wine, and for warming plasters to treat the rheumatism of the elderly. It is captured heat released by the labor of his hands. A soft, rhythmic jingling of metal announces the first visitor of the day. The door opens, admitting a swirl of snow and a young woman carrying two heavy tin pails suspended from a yoke across her shoulders. It is the milkmaid from the dairy farm at the edge of the village. She is wrapped in shawls so thick she looks almost spherical, her face glowing red from the exertion of walking through the drifts. She brings the morning delivery. The apothecary hurries to help her, lifting one of the heavy pails onto the counter. The metal is freezing cold to the touch, covered in condensation, but the liquid inside is warm. It is raw milk, fresh from the udder, still holding the body heat of the cow. A sweet, grassy steam rises from the pail, smelling of hay and livestock. It is a primal, wholesome scent. The apothecary fetches his own ceramic pitcher. The maid tips the pail. Splosh, gurgle, foam. The milk flows thick and creamy, frothing as it hits the bottom of the pitcher. They exchange a few words, news of the road, the depth of the snow in the fields, the health of the herd. It is a brief human moment of connection. She is the lifeline to the agricultural world outside the village walls. She takes her empty pail, the yoke creaking on her shoulders, and turns back to the door. "God keep you warm," she says, a standard winter blessing. The apothecary watches her trudge away into the snow, leaving behind the white treasure of the summer grass, preserved in liquid form to nourish the household through the frost. With the fresh milk secured and the ginger ground, the apothecary prepares a morning draught to fortify his own constitution. In the humoral theory of medicine, the winter is cold and wet, and the body must be balanced with things that are hot and dry. He takes a small saucepan and pours in a cup of the fresh creamy milk. He sets it on the trivet over the fire. As it warms, he adds a generous splash of ale, which curdles the milk slightly, creating a posset. To this he adds a pinch of the freshly ground ginger, a grating of nutmeg, and a spoonful of honey. He stirs it with a cinnamon stick. The mixture heats rapidly, sending up a rich, spicy aroma that smells like a festival. It bubbles gently. Loop, loop. He pours the steaming, thickened liquid into a clay mug. He holds it in both hands, letting the heat seep into his palms. He takes a sip. It is rich, sweet, and spicy, coating the throat and warming the chest instantly. The ginger prickles the tongue. The nutmeg soothes the spirit. The milk nourishes the flesh. It is a medicinal breakfast, designed to balance the humors and drive out the melancholy of the dark season. He stands by the window, looking out at the white world, sipping his posset. He feels the warmth spreading to his fingertips and toes. He is balanced. He is fortified. He is ready to face the sick and the freezing, who will soon come knocking at his door, seeking the warmth he has so carefully cultivated within these wooden walls. As the morning matures, the shop transforms from a place of solitary industry into the communal hub of the suffering village. The bell above the door begins to ring with increasing frequency, clang, jingle, clang, announcing the arrival of the patients. They enter in ones and twos, bringing with them the chill of the street and the hush of the sick room. The apothecary shop becomes a sanctuary, a warm purgatory between the freezing outdoors and the relief of medicine. The villagers gather near the great hearth, drawn instinctively to the fire like moths to a lantern. There is the blacksmith with a hacking cough, his face ingrained with soot. There is the weaver's wife with a colicky infant wrapped in layers of flannel. There is the old shepherd with joints stiffened by the frost. The room fills with the smell of damp wool, drying leather, and the faint metallic scent of fever. Yet the atmosphere is not one of panic, but of patience. In the 16th century, waiting is a woven part of life. There is no murmuring or pacing. They stand or sit on the benches, staring into the flames, allowing the heat to thaw their frozen extremities. The apothecary moves among them, a calming presence in his dark robes. He is the conductor of this small orchestra of ailments. He offers a cup of warm water here, a reassuring nod there. The shop hums with a low, quiet energy, a collective release of tension. Outside, the snow continues to pile up against the walls, but inside, within the circle of the firelight, there is a shared sense of safety, a tacit understanding that here, in this room of bottles and jars, help is at hand. The apothecary beckons the first patient, a young man with glassy eyes and a flushed complexion, to the consultation stool by the window. Diagnosis in this age is a tactile and visual art, relying on the senses of the physician rather than mechanical instruments. The apothecary reaches out and takes the man's wrist. He places his fingers, the index, middle, and ring, lightly over the radial artery. He closes his eyes. He is listening to the river of the blood. Thump, thump, thump. He does not have a watch with a second hand. Instead, he measures the pulse against the rhythm of his own breathing or the meter of a recited psalm. He feels for the quality of the beat. Is it bounding and hard, like a hammer? Is it thready and weak, like a silk string? Is it erratic, like a frightened bird? This touch is the first medicine. It connects the fear of the patient to the calm of the healer. Next, he asks for the flask. The patient produces a small glass vessel containing his morning urine. The apothecary holds the matula up to the light of the window. The amber liquid glows against the white backdrop of the snow. He examines it with the scrutiny of a jeweler. He looks for clouds, for sediments, for the nebula floating near the top. He checks the color. Is it pale as straw or red as brick? In the medical philosophy of the time, this fluid is a direct distillation of the body's humors. The apothecary reads the liquid like a book, deciphering the imbalance of heat and cold within the man's frame. He nods slowly, setting the flask down. The diagnosis is made without a word spoken, distilled from the rhythm of the blood and the color of the water. For the hacking cough that plagues the blacksmith, the apothecary decides to prepare a remedy of profound potency. The syrup of poppies, known as diacodium. He retrieves a jar of dried poppy heads, the Papaver somniferum. They are large, bulbous capsules, pale brown and brittle, crowned with a star-shaped stigma. He breaks them open, crack, crunch, shaking out the thousands of tiny slate-blue seeds, which are set aside for baking. It is the capsule shells he needs. He places them into a cauldron of water over the fire. As they boil, the water turns dark and murky, and a heavy narcotic scent begins to fill the shop. It is a smell that feels thick and drowsy, the scent of deep, dreamless sleep. He simmers the decoction for hours, until the volume is reduced by half. Then he strains the dark liquid through a woolen cloth, catching the soggy plant matter. To the black, bitter juice that remains, he adds a generous measure of sugar. He returns it to the fire. He stirs it slowly as it thickens. Bloop, bloop. The syrup becomes glossy and viscous, the color of molasses. This is powerful magic. It acts directly on the suffering spirit, quieting the urge to cough and inviting the mercy of sleep. He pours the finished syrup into a small, dark glass bottle. He labels it with a warning symbol. This is not a cure to be taken lightly. It is a bottle of silence, a liquid night that will extinguish the fire of the throat and bring peace to the weary workman. As the midday rush subsides and the last patient departs with their remedies clutching their chests, a quiet lull descends upon the shop. The apothecary takes this opportunity to engage in a task of microscopic hope, the sorting of seeds. Spring may be months away, but the garden must be planned now. He brings a wooden box to the table and opens it. Inside are dozens of folded paper packets. He opens one containing the seeds of Lactuca virosa, the wild lettuce. They are tiny, feathered specks, lighter than dust. He pours them onto the table. He uses a pair of tweezers to separate the chaff from the viable seed. Pick, flick, pick. It is a task that requires absolute stillness. Outside, the world is dead, locked in a tomb of ice. But here, on the oak plank, lies the potential for green life. Each tiny hard grain contains the blueprint of a plant, the shape of the leaf, the color of the flower, the bitterness of the sap. He sought seeds of dill, flat and brown like tiny shields. He sought seeds of fennel, ridged and aromatic, smelling of anise even in their dormancy. He counts them out, calculating the rows of the garden beds in his mind. This is an act of faith. By preserving these specks of life, he is betting on the return of the sun. He sweeps the clean seeds back into their packets, sealing them with a drop of wax. He places them back in the dark box, a library of future summers waiting for the soil to thaw. The solitude of the afternoon is broken by the arrival of a visitor, who seeks not medicine, but companionship. The village priest, Father Thomas, pushes open the door. He is a tall, spare man, wearing a cassock that is frayed at the hem and damp from the snow. He brings with him the smell of cold stone and frankincense, the lingering scent of the morning mass. He looks exhausted. The winter is hard on the souls of the parish as well as their bodies. The apothecary greets him warmly, ushering him to the stool nearest the fire. There is a deep, silent bond between these two men. One tends the vessel of the body, the other tends the vessel of the spirit. They are the two pillars upon which the village rests. The apothecary does not ask what is wrong. He simply goes to the cupboard and retrieves the jar of hippocras, the spiced wine he prepared earlier with the ginger. He pours 2 small pewter cups. He hands one to the priest. The wine is deep red, steaming slightly, smelling of cinnamon and cloves. The priest wraps his cold hands around the metal cup. They sit in silence for a long time, sipping the hot, sweet wine. The firelight plays on their faces. They speak in low voices about the state of the village, who is failing, who is recovering, who has a new child. It is a sharing of the burden. In this quiet hour, the distinction between prayer and prescription blurs. They are simply 2 watchmen sitting by the fire, drinking warmth against the cold, keeping their vigil over the flock that huddles in the snow-covered houses all around them. The visit of the priest concludes, and the shop settles back into its solitary rhythm. The afternoon light is now failing fast, the grey sky deepening to a bruised purple behind the snow clouds. The apothecary turns to a task that requires dexterity and patience, the rolling of pills. In an age before gelatin capsules, bitter medicines must be hidden within palatable solids. He takes a mass of pill mass, a stiff dough made of aloes, scammony, and mastic from a ceramic jar. It is black and shiny, smelling intensely of resin. He places it on a marble slab dusted with licorice powder to prevent sticking. He rolls the mass out into a long, thin snake, his hands moving back and forth with a steady, rhythmic pressure. Roll, stretch, roll. The snake grows longer and thinner. He takes a bronze pill cutter, a tool resembling a comb. He presses it down onto the snake. Click. The dough is divided into 20 equal segments. Now comes the meditation of the spheres. He takes each small segment and rolls it between his thumb and forefinger, round and round. He shapes them into perfect pea-sized balls. He drops them into a box filled with lycopodium powder, the spores of club moss, which act as a dry lubricant. He gives the box a shake, rattle, swish. The black pills are coated in the pale yellow dust, looking like tiny, soft stones. These are pilulæ copiae, powerful purges intended to balance the humors. The repetition of the rolling, the smell of the licorice, and the growing pile of spheres in the box is a deeply satisfying process of manufacturing, turning raw chaos into uniform doses of order. The scent of the pill making is soon replaced by a much more savory aroma as the apothecary prepares his evening meal. The winter appetite demands sustenance that is hot, liquid, and fatty. He swings the iron crane of the fireplace outward, bringing the heavy cauldron within reach. Into it he tosses the chopped root vegetables he prepared earlier, the turnips, the parsnips, the onions. To this foundation he adds a chunk of salted pork belly, rinsing the excess brine off in a bowl first. He pours in water and a splash of ale. He swings the pot back over the main fire. As the evening progresses, the stew begins to simmer. Bubble, hiss, lip. The smell fills the shop, a dense, rich fog of onions and meat that pushes back the sterile scents of the pharmacy. It is the smell of the peasant kitchen, timeless and grounding. He does not rush the cooking. The fire does the work. He sits by the hearth, whittling a new stopper from a piece of cork while he waits. The sound of the knife shaving the cork, scritch, slice, mixes with the bubbling of the pot. When it is ready, The meat is falling apart and the broth is thick and golden. He ladles it into his wooden bowl. He sops up the liquid with a crust of rye bread. The heat of the stew radiates through his chest. A second fire lit within the body to combat the long, cold night ahead. The meal finished, the apothecary remembers the alembic still bubbling gently in the corner. The distillation of the rosemary water is complete. He approaches the apparatus. The fire beneath the copper cucurbit has died down to a few glowing coals, just enough to keep the liquid warm. The receiving flask is full of crystal-clear distillate, with a thin, shimmering layer of essential oil floating on top like a halo. The air in the corner smells intensely of the herb, a sharp, piney, clean scent that cuts through the heaviness of the dinner stew. He carefully disconnects the flask. He pours the precious liquid into a series of small blue glass phials. He uses a small silver funnel to ensure not a drop is spilt. Glug, trickle, stop. He corks each phial tightly. This water is Aqua Reginae Hungaria, Hungary water, famous for clearing the mind and strengthening the memory. He holds a bottle up to the rushlight. The liquid catches the flame, glowing with a pure inner light. It is a captured memory of the summer sun, distilled from the dry needles of the winter plant. He places the bottles in a row on the shelf, their blue glass shining in the shadows. The alembic is dismantled and wiped clean, the copper gleaming dull and red in the firelight, its work of alchemy finished for another day. With the manual labor of the day concluded, the apothecary indulges in a moment of intellectual connection with the cosmos. He retrieves his almanac from the shelf. This is a small paper-bound booklet, printed on cheap paper, filled with astronomical charts, weather predictions, and the phases of the moon. He carries it to the light. He turns the pages to January. He traces the symbols with his finger. He checks the position of Saturn, the planet of cold and melancholy which rules the winter season. He notes the phase of the moon. It is waning, a time for harvesting roots and purging the body, but not for planting. He reads the weather prognostication. Expect great frosts and heavy snows. The accuracy of the prediction brings a wry smile to his face. He looks at the man of signs, the diagram showing which zodiac sign rules which part of the body. The ram rules the head, the bull rules the throat. He considers his patients, the blacksmith's throat, the lord's foot. He sees the patterns of the stars reflected in the ailments of the village. This is not superstition to him, but a grand, interconnected system of logic, as above, so below. He reads the almanac not with fear, but with a sense of participating in a giant clockwork universe. He is merely the mechanic, adjusting the small gears of the human body to match the turning of the great celestial wheels. The final hour of the apothecary's day is a ritual of closure and security. The shop must be put to sleep. He moves through the room, extinguishing the lights one by one. He blows out the lantern by the door, puff, and the scent of hot tallow vanishes into the dark. He pinches out the rushlights on the counter, plunging the shelves of jars into shadow. Only the fire remains, a low red eye watching from the hearth. He checks the door one last time, testing the weight of the oak bar. It is solid. He checks the window shutters. They are tight. He walks to the back door and checks the latch. He is the captain of the ship, securing the hatches against the night. He picks up Galen the cat, who has been sleeping on the woolsack. He carries the heavy, purring animal to the kitchen area, setting him down near his bowl of milk. "Keep the watch," he whispers. The cat blinks, his yellow eyes reflecting the embers, and settles in to wait for the mice. The shop is silent now, save for the wind which has begun to moan softly in the chimney. The smells of the day, the rosemary, the stew, the burning wood, the ginger, have blended into a single, complex aroma that is the signature scent of the house. It is the smell of safety. The apothecary stands in the center of the dark room for a moment, listening. He hears nothing but the peace of his own domain. He turns, and begins the climb up the creaking stairs, ascending from the world of commerce and cure into the private, warm world of sleep. Having ascended the creaking staircase, the apothecary enters the bedchamber for the final time this night. The room has changed since the morning. It has settled into a profound stillness that feels almost solid. The air here is colder than in the shop below, a sharp, crisp chill that carries the scent of the limestone walls and the lavender packed into the linen chest. The rushlight in his hand casts a small, trembling sphere of yellow light, pushing back the heavy blue shadows that crowd the corners. He moves to the washstand and splashes a little water onto his face. The water is freezing, a shock that serves to wash away the sticky residue of the pill rolling and the lingering smell of the pork stew. He dries his face on a rough towel, feeling the friction against his skin. He unties his sash and removes his heavy woolen robe, hanging it on the peg where it will wait like a faithful ghost until dawn. He is left in his long linen nightshirt, shivering slightly in the biting air. He approaches the bed. The curtains are already drawn, enclosing the warmth he prepared earlier with the pan. He parts the heavy green fabric, swish, and climbs up the wooden step. He slips quickly inside, letting the curtain fall back into place. The cold world is instantly shut out. He is cocooned in the dark, warm hollow of the feathers, surrounded by the smell of toasted linen and the faint, sweet scent of the dried herbs in his pillow. Inside the sanctuary of the box bed, the apothecary surrenders the weight of his body to the mattress. The bed is a masterpiece of mechanics designed for rest. The ropes woven beneath the mattress have a slight give, cradling his hips and shoulders, while the dense packing of the goose down supports his tired limbs. He pulls the heavy woolen blankets up to his chin, tucking them in around his shoulders to form a seal against the drafts. He lies on his back, staring up into the absolute blackness of the canopy. His body, which has been in constant motion since the rooster crowed, grinding, stirring, chopping, lifting, now begins to power down. He feels the tension draining out of his legs, leaving them heavy and loose. He feels the muscles of his back unknotting, sinking into the soft surface. The heat of the bed penetrates his skin, relaxing the blood vessels, allowing the warmth to flow to his cold feet. He listens to the house. The wind outside has picked up again, a low, distant moaning that buffs against the stone walls. But here, inside the wool tent, it sounds miles away. The house creaks gently, a timber ship riding the frozen ocean of the night. These sounds are not alarming. They are the familiar lullaby of his life, the acoustic signature of shelter. He is safe. He is warm. The day is done. As the apothecary drifts toward the borderlands of sleep, his mind begins to untether itself from the rigid logic of the pharmacy. The rows of jars, the precise measurements of grains and scruples, the Latin names of the plants, all of these dissolve into a soft, abstract mist. He is no longer thinking of the cinchona bark or the papaver seeds. Instead, his mind travels downward, past the floorboards, past the shop, past the cellar, deep into the earth beneath the village. He imagines the roots of the great trees in the forest, sleeping in the frozen dark. He visualizes the dormant seeds of the nettle and the dark, curled tight in their hard shells, waiting in the cold mud. He feels a kinship with them. Like the roots, he is hunkered down, conserving his energy, waiting for the turning of the sun. The winter is not an enemy to be fought, but a season of rest to be endured. It is the long inhalation of the world before the exhalation of the spring. This thought brings a profound sense of peace. He is part of the natural order, a creature of the earth, obeying the same laws as the oak and the badger. The rhythm of his breathing slows, matching the slow, deep pulse of the winter night. In and out, in and out. The darkness of the bed merges with the darkness of the earth, and he floats in the quiet, suspended space between waking and dreams. Let your own awareness rise now, lifting gently away from the sleeping apothecary in his timber-framed house. Drift upwards, passing through the thatched roof, through the chimney smoke that curls lazily into the night, and out into the vast open air above the village. The snow has stopped falling, the clouds have parted, revealing a sky of infinite velvet black, studded with stars that burn with a cold diamond brilliance. The moon is a sliver of ice, casting a pale blue light over the landscape. Look down at the village. It is a collection of white mounds and dark shadows huddled together in the valley. There are no lights burning. The entire community has retreated into the warmth of their beds. The only movement is the slow drift of the wood smoke and the sway of the bare trees in the forest. The silence is absolute. It is the great silence of the pre-industrial night, a silence so deep it feels like a heavy blanket laid over the world. The frozen river winds through the valley like a ribbon of black glass, reflecting the stars. The hills rise up on all sides, white and smooth, guarding the sleeping hamlet. It is a scene of perfect frozen beauty, a world held in stasis, resting under the watchful eye of the winter constellations. Drift further now, moving away from the village and into the deep ancient woods that surround it. Here the snow lies deep and undisturbed, a pristine carpet that muffles every sound. The trees, great oaks, beeches, and elms, stand like iron statues, their black branches etched against the starlight. They are dormant, their sap pulled deep into their roots, their bark hard as stone. But there is life here, hidden in the hollows of the trunks. Squirrels and dormice are curled in balls of fur, sleeping the deep sleep of hibernation. In the earth beneath the snow, the badger sleeps in his set, breathing the warm, musky air of the underground. High in the branches, an owl sits motionless, a white ghost watching the snow, waiting for the movement of a mouse. The forest is not dead, it is merely waiting. There is a sense of immense patience here. The trees have stood through hundreds of winters. They know that the cold will pass, that the ice will melt, that the sun will return. This is the wisdom of the winter, the necessity of rest. Just as the forest needs the cold to reset its rhythm, so too does the human spirit need the quiet of the night to restore its strength. You are part of this forest. You are safe in the deep, quiet woods, watched over by the stars and the silent standing trees. Now gently guide your awareness back from the snowy forest to the sanctuary of your own room. Just as the apothecary has his timber-framed haven against the winter, you too have a fortress of safety. Your walls are thick and strong, built to withstand the winds of the world. Your window is the barrier that keeps the cold at bay. Your bed is the warm, soft center of your home, the place where the burdens of the day are laid down. Feel the atmosphere of your room settling around you. It is a protective space, a capsule of calm in the middle of the night. You do not need to worry about the snow or the frost or the fire. Your only task now is to rest. Imagine that you are lying in the apothecary's box bed, surrounded by the heavy green curtains. The world outside is vast and cold, but inside your personal space, the air is still and warm. You are the keeper of this warmth. You have prepared your environment. You have secured the doors, and you have earned this time of peace. Allow the feeling of safety to seep into your bones. There is no one needing a remedy, no one knocking at the door, no ledger to be balanced. The shop is closed. The village is asleep. You are alone in the best possible way, held in the comfortable embrace of your own private winter sanctuary. Bring your attention to your physical form, resting now in your own bed. Let the relaxation begin at your feet. Imagine that your feet are heavy and warm, like the roots of the great trees sleeping in the earth. Let that heaviness travel up your legs, past your knees, into your thighs. Your muscles are unknotted, releasing the tension of the walking and the standing. Feel your hips sinking into the mattress, supported completely by the bed. Move your awareness to your hands. Your hands, which have worked so hard today, typing, carrying, holding, are now open and empty. They are still, like the tools on the apothecary's workbench at night. The mortar is silent, the pestle is at rest. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears, lowering the defenses of the day. Feel the back of your neck lengthening and softening. Your head is heavy on the pillow, supported by the soft herbs of sleep. Your jaw unclamps. Your tongue rests on the floor of your mouth. Your eyes are soft behind your eyelids. You are melting into the mattress, your body turning into liquid warmth. You are as heavy as the stoneware jars in the cellar, grounded and stable, resting in the cool, dark quiet of the night. As your body settles, allow your mind to follow the example of the apothecary shop at night. It is time to close the shutters of your thoughts. Imagine each worry, each plan, each memory of the day as a jar on a shelf. You do not need to take them down and examine them now. They will be there in the morning. For now, leave them where they are. Visualize yourself walking around the room of your mind, extinguishing the lights. Blow out the candle of anxiety, puff. Snuff out the rushlight of planning. Watch the shadows lengthen and the room grow dim. The internal shop is closed for business. There is no commerce here, no exchange of ideas, no problem solving. There is only the quiet hum of existence. Imagine the ledger book of your day being closed with a heavy thud. The ink is dry, the page is turned, the record is finished. You are free from the need to think, to analyze, to decide. You are simply a breathing presence in the dark, watching the embers of your consciousness fade from orange to a soft, sleepy gray. The silence of the shop is now the silence of your mind, a deep, dusty, peaceful quiet that wraps around you like a heavy woolen blanket. The images of the village and the shop begin to fade now, dissolving into a soft white mist. The jars on the shelves, the fire in the hearth, the snow in the street, they all blur and soften, losing their edges. You are drifting away from the solid world of wood and stone. You are floating into the white silence of the winter dream. Imagine that you are a single snowflake, falling slowly through the dark, windless sky. You are light and perfect. You are drifting down, rocking gently on the air, spiraling slowly toward the earth. There is no rush to land. You are suspended in the cool, velvet night. Below you, the world is a soft, white cloud of sleep. It is inviting and deep. You are sinking deeper and deeper into relaxation, layer by layer, flake by flake. The cold is not harsh. It is a cooling balm for your tired mind. The silence is not empty. It is a full, rich presence that holds you. You are part of the great hibernation of the world. You are sleeping with the seeds and the roots and the trees. You are safe in the deep midwinter of your soul, drifting on the slow, quiet currents of the night. And so, our chronicle of the apothecary's winter draws to its close. The fire has burned down to embers, the door is barred, and the village sleeps under its blanket of snow. We leave the apothecary there, safe in his warm bed, dreaming of his summer garden. But the peace he found is yours to keep. Carry the warmth of the hearth into your sleep. Carry the scent of the lavender and the quiet of the snow into your dreams. The story is finished, but the rest remains. You have traveled far, you have listened well, and now you have earned this deep, restorative slumber. The night is yours. The darkness is a friend. Wrap it around you like the heavy green curtain of the bed and sleep. Sleep now, safe in the knowledge that the medicine is prepared, the house is secure, and the spring will come in its own good time. Good night.